Okay, I'm going to introduce this book that I'm using for this next section of sustainability. I'm using different books and we will cover this one. I read the book in great detail. It takes time and then decided to adopt it for a course or a series of podcasts covering the entire book. And it turned out that I had gotten the first edition which was printed in 2014, and just as I was finishing preparing the course, the PPTs, the entire thing, the second edition just came out, and then it has been restructured a little bit. A lot of the material is of course the same, but there are some additions because there is also new information that has since come in terms of Paris Agreement and all that followed with global warming targets, nationally determined contributions. COVID came and had significant impact on how we should think about climate action, sustainability, etc. So I decided to put this podcast up front before getting into the meat of the book. So it's called Sustainability Science Managing Risk and Resilience for Sustainable Development by Per Becker. I like the idea because he basically insists on having a sustainable development pathway and resilience as the metric or a measure of how we can come back to the sustainable development pathway every time there is a perturbation or a detour from it because of climate change, geopolitics, COVID, pandemics, whatever else, right? So I have managed to restructure the whole PPT that I had created, which again took a lot of work because I have to read the second edition again and make sure I am not missing anything and adding the right parts from the second edition to the first edition. I didn't want to just jump to the second edition completely because I had put in so much of work, and I realized after reading the second edition that there is a lot of material that directly is taken from the first edition. Nobody completely overwrites it, right? So the first part I'm going to cover here is the introducing the book. We'll read a little bit about that. The book is now split into, as before, you don't know that because I'm just covering this book, The State of the World, Approaching the World, and Changing the World. So those are three sections. Each one has 5 chapters. So we go through things like our past, defining our present, our growing awareness of sustainability challenges. So introduction here basically talks about the climate change, the impacts and what we are doing about it, and so on. Our boundaries for sustainability, so gets into the planetary boundaries that we have already talked about elsewhere. Our disturbances, disruptions and disasters, our dynamic risk landscape. That's the first part where we are setting a baseline in terms of the state of the world. In second one, we are looking at approaching the world. How do we do it? How do you get into sustainability science and actually begin to look at the world in this context? So conceptual frames for risk, resilience and sustainable development. Resilience from Panacea to pragmatic. So it's not a panacea that sustainability has become such a buzzword, let's say, just like resilience, that we keep on saying it, but it's not always clear how to implement them. And it's not like you say, okay, we reached sustainability, now we are done. It's just a continuous mission, right? And there is, of course, the issue of grasping complexity, governing and governmentalization. We'll see what that means. The world as human environment systems, which we have already done in the Earth System courses and other climate change issues where we have to look at the feedbacks. And then part 3 is changing the world, science and change, understanding resistance to knowledge and change. We often call it barriers to sustainability or barriers to implementation of sustainability. You have technical challenges, barriers, governance issues, you have institutional issues, policies, etc. So capacity development for resilience, this is important. Social change for resilient society. So you have to define social change and then you have to get people to understand and engage in it, so you co-produce your solutions and make sure people whose lives are affected, livelihoods are affected by your sustainability efforts, should be aware of what it is that you're proposing and why. they may benefit from it, or what may change in their lives that may be not ideal compared to just sticking with what they are already doing, right? You're telling them they need to change, and we all need to change, but you have to convince them. On a bumpy road from Industria to Sustainia, so that's a question mark, so we'll see what that means. So that's a new chapter here, and concluding remarks, we will look at the summary of what we will discuss throughout the book. So the author provides introduction, as I said, and then defines the purpose of the book, demarcation of the book, which I'll read a little bit, structure of the book, this is it, and conclusion we will read, and the references. Every chapter has a fantastic list of references. So let's read his words for purpose of the book. As I attempt to show in this book, the increasing complexity and dynamic character of our world demand conceptual and practical approaches to sustainable development that helps us grasp and manage uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and dynamic change. And we have to make lots of decisions despite these ambiguities and complexities and even uncertainties in the risks that we are facing. Only thing is to be flexible so that you can keep on coming back to sustainable development and not go too far off. I argue that risk is a key concept in this context, as considering sustainability requires us to think ahead into an uncertain future. I also assert that the concept of resilience is central, and take it further by providing a conceptual framework that gives a practical guidance for analyzing and developing the resilience of societies, communities, organizations, etc. This book is therefore necessarily transdisciplinary, drawing upon contributions from a wide range of disciplines such as anthropology, archaeology, design, engineering, geography, public administration, sociology, etc., and integrating them under the premise of sustainability science, the premise of bringing together the scholarship and practice, global and local perspectives from north to south, and disciplines across all sciences to address the core challenges of humankind. Sustainability science asserts that to facilitate the much needed shift towards sustainable development, we must be able to span the range of social and temporal scales of various phenomena, manage complexity, and recognize a wide range of perspectives as usable knowledge from both society and science. So resilience by nature introduces a time scale, right, a temporal scale, and the rest of it introduces spatial scales. So think globally, act locally, and in the entire system is only as resilient as the weakest component in the system. So we have to carry everybody. So all the issues of equity, justice, opportunities come up, obviously. This task is formidable, but I intend to contribute by presenting one approach to risk, resilience, and sustainability designed to tackle it, leaving you to judge if this approach is useful for your purposes. I am covering it, and there are people who will complain that I'm not an expert, but I spent so much time learning that I want to be sure that I'm able to teach it. And doing research in this direction goes on because adaptation, early warnings, and sustainability are all tied together. So we're addressing it. Some people will be more specifically into it, with circular economy being the main framework used for sustainability and so on, but they miss out on the other parts that I cover. So it's all interdisciplinary, so we all have to take chances and learn new things and teach them as well. So pedagogy is slightly different. Doing research is always something that adds value to your base understanding of the topic so that you become a better teacher, and that will happen as we go along. Okay, this book is the book is both descriptive in the sense of describing how the world is, and prescriptive in the sense of prescribing what it ought to be and what we ought to do to get there. So you change your vision of where we want to go, that because where we are going is not good, it's already decided. Then how do we get there? And how do you convince everybody that this is where we need to go? And how do you make it happen? However, I attempt to maintain scientific rigor in both showing how traditional science and design science can complement each other when our needs for explaining and understanding various phenomena give way to solving real world problems. In other words, when we shift from being mainly concerned with the pursuit of knowledge to focusing on designing artifacts for satisfying predefined purposes. So sustainability as a science, sustainability principles are all great, but those are like swimming lessons. You have to jump into the pool and start swimming to see if your theory holds up, because sustainability is about implementation, managing risk and resilience for sustainable development. So we must learn these and then go into implementation. In short, the purpose of the book is to present a coherent framework for grasping and addressing issues of sustainability in our increasingly complex and dynamic world. So the book is much more based on science of sustainability and principles and concepts, pedagogical, and not any case studies and so on, whereas in Sustaining the Commons we kept looking at case studies, right? Demarcation of the book, that's his words again. Sustainable development is both conceptually and practically a broad and multifaceted issue. It's an issue of paramount importance for the continued existence of the world as we know it. At its core lies the idea that in planning for the future, we must think about what to do and not to do today to bring about the future that we imagine, we want. The main part of the sustainability must, in other words, be forward-looking, although we must also learn from our past and recognize our present challenges. So we do paleoclimate to understand climate sensitivity and other things, to do climate modeling, future projections, CO2 increase, and how it will do in the current context compared to what it has done in the past, because CO2 has always been a part of climate variability. And in sustainability, you are adding natural human system and trying to understand in the past how climate change has impacted ecology, biodiversity broadly, but much more recently, let's say the Holocene, our species, but also going back to, let's say, a million years or two. Our ancestors have also lived through many climate change impacts. They made choices in terms of going out of Africa, colonizing the whole world, and we have many species like the Neanderthals that disappeared. We have to figure out why that is, or whether they just completely merged into sapiens and so on, right? So the Oxford Dictionary defines sustainable as able to be upheld or defended. It indicates a somewhat double meaning, which not only provides a linguistic link between safety and sustainability, but also denotes two requisite parts for sustainable development. What are they? Safety, the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. You cannot be sustainable and then have people getting hurt or systems collapsing or being at risk all the time. And this is, in other words, closely related to the notion of being able to be defended. So you are safe when you can defend it. However, safety often connotes immediate or short time spans, while sustainability typically connotes gazing further into the future. That said, both entail acting now, and sustainability science states the necessity to be able to integrate such a range of temporal scales into our whole implementation plan, let's say. Safety is thus engulfed by sustainability if looking beyond the immediate, if focusing on the potential of future destructive courses of events, at least partly resulting from or related to human activity. We typically assert that such activity or development is not sustainable. Well, the same situation, but with an immediate focus, would instead evoke notions of an unsafe condition or practice. It's wordy, but you know what we mean. If we are burning a lot of fossil fuels right now and we are mining for all the precious minerals and materials we need for building even renewable batteries, cars, solar panels, etc., is that all to adding to sustainability without adding any risks to safety? So you have to always worry about the full 360-degree view, right? So there are time scales involved. You are continuing to burn fossil fuels right now and continuing to grow renewable energies, batteries, EVs, and so on, solutions, adaptation, etc. But there is a resilience time scale that any perturbation that comes along must not throw us out of this path that we are on, and it should not jeopardize safety. Okay, so that's the idea of the book, and we'll come back and read each chapter in some detail. Obviously, I won't read the whole book. I pick the most salient points based on my own judgment, and we look at all the figures, because a figure is always a picture is always worth 1,000 words. So it's the best way to also encapsulate what the ideas that the author is trying to put forth with the figures. Many of them are schematics, and they are very useful as well. Okay, so with that introduction, we'll come back and start the course itself based on this book called Sustainability Science. Let's read again, by Per Becker, Managing Risk and Resilience for Sustainable Development. So it's a path we want to be on. You know, many words are used now: weather ready, climate resilient nation, and so on. But can we all do it separately? We cannot, because the entire system has to be resilient and sustainable if global sustainability is possible at all. So we'll address some of those issues. Okay, that's where governance and governmentalization come in, because it's not just about state boundaries but also global governance, which is happening under Paris Agreement and various other tools, mechanisms, frameworks that we are putting together, the biodiversity conservation, avoiding desertification, and all those conventions that are grown under the UN umbrella have to be implemented and sustained. So those all add up to global resilience and sustainability as well, if we keep doing it correctly. Okay, see you in the next podcast. We'll open the second chapter, as we already said, which is going to be the state of the world. That's the section, our past defining our present. So we'll see what we mean by that. Okay, see you.